massive, real-world scale of a number you've likely heard thrown around, but might not truly comprehend, 1 lakh. We see it in news headlines, financial reports, and population statistics. But when numbers get this huge, our human brains tend to short-circuit just a little bit, you know? It kind of just becomes this abstract concept. So our goal today is to ground that massive number in reality.
So, do you know exactly how big 1 lakh actually is? Rather than just staring at dry math on a whiteboard, let's dive straight into a really fascinating real-world mystery to figure out exactly how huge this number is.
To really picture it, our story begins with a farmer named Eshwarappa. He was just hanging out at his local seed market in Chintamani, Karnataka, when he overheard a conversation that completely stopped him in his tracks. 2 locals were chatting about the history of agriculture, and they dropped this astonishing fact. India used to have about 1 lakh indigenous varieties of rice. Just think about that for a second. We usually just grab whatever's at the local grocery store, but 1 lakh different varieties? That is an absolutely staggering amount of biodiversity.
Well, naturally, Eshwarappa goes home and just has to share this mind-blowing fact with his son, Istu, and his daughter, Roxy. And this is where it gets really fun, because telling curious kids a massive number like that immediately sparked a pretty wild mathematical thought experiment.
Istu, who realized he had only ever tasted maybe 3 varieties of rice in his entire life, wondered aloud, if they tried a brand new variety of rice every single day, could they finish tasting all of them in a 100-year lifespan?
Okay, let's actually work through the math together, just like Istu and Roxy did. If we ignore leap years just to keep things simple, multiplying 365 days in a year by 100 years means a really long human lifetime only has 36,500 days. Working through it step by step, it becomes incredibly clear. 36,500 is not even close to 1 lakh. Even if you lived to be a century old, trying 1 new rice variety every single day, you literally wouldn't even make it halfway through the list.
Roxy and Istu dug a little deeper and realized something even wilder. Even if a person ate 3 entirely different varieties of rice every single day, we're talking 1 for breakfast, 1 for lunch, and 1 for dinner, for 100 straight years, they'd hit roughly 109,500. So think about that. It takes eating 3 different varieties every single day for an entire century just to barely cross the threshold of 1 lakh.
All right, Section 2, the pattern of a lakh, building up to 1,000,000.
So how do we actually build up to a number that massive? Well, there's a fundamental, elegant rule to our number system. By simply adding +1 to the largest number of a given digit length, we immediately cross the threshold into the smallest number of the next digit length. For example, adding 1 to the largest 3-digit number, 999, gives us the smallest 4-digit number, 1,000. Add 1 to 9,999 and you get 10,000. It's like this beautiful, infinite staircase of scale. When we follow this +1 pattern all the way up from 99,999, we finally reach the smallest 6-digit number. That's a 1 followed by exactly 5 zeros. And in the Indian numbering system, this incredibly important milestone is exactly what we call 1 lakh.
Moving right along to Section 3, Visualizing Massive Numbers. What else represents a lakh?
Roxy actually had a brilliant observation for this. If you took 1 lakh people, like say the crowd at a massive book fair, and stood them all shoulder to shoulder in a single continuous line, that line of people would stretch as far as 38 kilometers. Imagine driving your car at highway speeds for a solid half hour and just passing a continuous wall of people. That is 1 lakh. And this brilliantly illustrates the diverse ways a lakh pops up in nature and society. A sitter pointed out that the massive cricket stadium in Ahmedabad actually has a seating capacity of over 1 lakh. All those cheering fans packed into one arena. Or, honestly, just look in the mirror. Most humans have between 80,000 and 120,000 hairs on their heads. Look to the oceans, and a single female of certain fish species can comfortably lay almost 1 lakh eggs all at once. It's a number that defines both grand human architecture and microscopic biology.
Okay, Section 4, Commas and Number Systems, Indian versus American systems.
Now, as numbers grow to this massive scale, we obviously use commas to make them readable, right? But how you place those commas depends entirely on where you live. Notice how the Indian system groups the number 10 lakhs with commas in a 3-2-2-2 pattern, reading from right to left. But the American or international system groups that exact same number uniformly every 3 digits, calling it 1 million. It's the exact same mathematical value, just a totally different visual language for organizing it. In the Indian system, which by the way stems from the ancient Sanskrit words laksha and koti, once we scale up and hit 100 lakhs, the terminology shifts again. We call it 1 crore, which is written as a 1 followed by 7 zeros. Meanwhile, the American system just jumps from millions to 10 millions to 100 millions.
Okay, let's distill this down to the core takeaway. A lakh is simply 100 times 1,000, and a crore? That is 100 times a lakh. So whether you're counting ancient indigenous rice seeds, roaring stadium seats, or the days in a human lifetime, just remember that scale builds exponentially.
And that leaves us with one final, kind of mind-bending thought experiment to close out today's explainer. Think back to Estu and Roxy. If a 100-year lifetime isn't nearly enough time to taste a lakh of rice varieties at one a day, how many centuries would it take you to taste a crore? I'll let you crunch those numbers on your own. Thanks so much for learning with us today, and keep exploring the massive numbers all around you.